In January 2011, the San Francisco 49ers were at rock bottom. Across the prior 8 seasons, they'd lost 82 games and missed the playoffs each year. Had a quarterback taken first overall whose career looked to be beaten and battered into oblivion. But then, they won the Jim Harbaugh sweepstakes. CEO Jed York and GM Trent Baalke miraculously landed the hottest coaching commodity around. And with Harbaugh captaining the Niners ship, their days as an NFL bottom feeder looked to be over, quick. He brought quarterback Alex Smith's career back from the dead with a passing attack that leaned heavily on wideout Michael Crabtree and tight end Vernon Davis. The power run game Harbaugh installed for tailback Frank Gore flourished behind an offensive line of maulers anchored by all-pro left tackle Joe Staley. But this was a team whose defense led the way and set the tone, and that all started with a front seven that oozed superstar talent. Interior D lineman Justin Smith was the heartbeat of the team and its MVP. The attention he demanded from opposing offenses freed up not only Aldon Smith, their sensational rookie pass rusher, but also planet Earth's top 2 inside linebackers, Patrick Willis and electric first-year starter Navarro Bowman. With Harbaugh pushing all the right buttons, they cruised through the regular season, racking up 13 wins and clinching the NFC West title plus a first-round bye. And though they won a thrilling back-and-forth game for the ages on this last-second missile from Smith to Davis, they also lost Ted Ginn to a knee injury in the game, and boy did they feel their return specialist's absence the next week. Facing the Giants in the NFC Championship game, the Niners had already rallied to overcome 1 turnover by replacement return man Kyle Williams and force overtime. In the extra frame, the Niners forced a punt that Williams fielded and again turned over, enabling a chip shot field goal to end their season in agonizing fashion. When the next season rolled around, Harbaugh led them to a 6-2 start and had Alex Smith playing exceptional ball, though a Week 10 concussion opened the door for backup Colin Kaepernick to shine, compelling Harbaugh to ride the hot hand and stick with the youngster. After again winning their division, Kaepernick thoroughly dominated the Packers in his first career playoff game, dissecting them through the air and running all over them on the ground. Highlighted by this 56-yard touchdown that gave him the lead for good on a night where he rushed for the most yards by a quarterback in any game in NFL history. Then he went to Atlanta to win the NFC Championship game, earning a trip to New Orleans in Super Bowl 47. After falling behind 28-6 against a Ravens team coached by Harbaugh's brother, the Niners rallied to cut the deficit to 5 for their final possession, where they drove down to the doorstep of the goal line and NFL immortality. But on 4th and goal, Baltimore got quite handsy with Crabtree, and no flag meant another year of brutal heartbreak. Nevertheless, under the guidance of Harbaugh, who, according to Hall of Famer John Madden, had done the best coaching job in the history of the NFL in year 1, the team was in magnificent shape. They had an abundance of talent, all overseen by the khaki-wearing miracle worker, and nothing could get in their way. Well, nothing but the pride and ego of Niner management. In the 2012 NFL Draft that preceded that Super Bowl run, Trent Baalke executed one of the most ghastly draft classes imaginable, with the 7 guys he picked combining to play just 42 games for the team, punctuated by first-round wideout A.J. Jenkins, who I will now show you every all-time pass the Niners ever threw to him. That's it. And that hideous draft class is what sparked the first real fissure in the Harbaugh-Baalke dynamic. But they were still set up beautifully and just had to take care of some off-season housekeeping to keep the train rolling. With Kaepernick now firmly entrenched as the team's starting quarterback, they flipped Smith to Kansas City for a couple second-round picks, while on the same day trading for grown man wide receiver Anquan Boldin. During the summer, Harbaugh and Jed York held talks to extend his contract, but York refused to cut the check necessary to get it done, clinging to the logic that he didn't want to pay Harbaugh like a Super Bowl winning coach because he hadn't won a Super Bowl. And while that's technically accurate, it's also pretty flawed logic. I mean, had the officials properly flagged Jimmy Smith at the end of Super Bowl 47 with the Niners then winning, would that somehow have made Harbaugh an inherently better football coach? So he'd need to keep proving himself. No problem. They again remained arguably the NFL's top team in 2013, but But with Seattle edging them out for the division, San Francisco got to take a lovely January trip to Wisconsin featuring a wind chill reaching double digits below zero for wildcard weekend. But the California-based team pulled it out, and with a win the next week in Charlotte, Harbaugh became the only coach in NFL history to make the conference championship game in each of his first 3 seasons. During the following week's de facto Super Bowl in the Pacific Northwest, the Niners managed to take a second-half lead on this absurd backyard-style touchdown pass from Kaepernick to Anquan Boldin. Their next possession ended with a punt, but they should have kept the ball when the refs failed to enforce what clearly should have been a 15-yard penalty and automatic first down.
We see Lee get hit with that plant leg, and Mike Pereira, was that the proper call?
No, really, and I think Jim Harbaugh was making the point with Gene Steratore. If you hit the plant leg like they did here with the ankle turning over, that's roughing.
In Seattle's ensuing drive that shouldn't have happened in the first place, they came up short on a third down with 14:50 left to play. In a league with a 40-second play clock, the discombobulated Seahawks were somehow able to call a timeout 58 seconds later. This wasn't some run-of-the-mill bad call. It was an inexplicable administrative gaffe that removed a delay of game penalty from the equation. So on a drive that never should have existed, on a 4th and 7 that arguably should have been 4th and 12, Seattle parlayed their serendipitous fortune into scoring what was ultimately the game-winning touchdown. This battle royale also provided the first huge domino to fall in leading to San Francisco's demise when, midway through the 4th quarter, Navarro Bowman suffered this grisly knee injury while ripping the ball away from the Seahawks and clearly maintaining possession before getting dogpiled with that shredded knee, only to see the refs give the ball back to Seattle. It took about a month for the next gut punch, when reports started emerging of the 49ers having nearly completed a trade of Harbaugh to the Browns before getting nixed at the 11th hour. Now, Harbaugh can certainly be high maintenance, and his maniacal drive to win can be prone to rubbing his superiors the wrong way. But that's how he thrived, and despite all the winning it produced, York and Baalke apparently just preferred to have a yes man who never pushed back as coach. The very next week, a report surfaced that Harbaugh was losing the locker room. It was the beginning of a year-long, drama-filled whisper campaign throughout 2014 with seemingly weekly leaks to the media by Jed York and/or his minions engineered to try and make Harbaugh look bad. And with their all-world linebackers sidelined for the entire year after that horrific knee injury in Seattle, the misery was just beginning. Their very first game in brand new Levi Stadium saw them choke away a 13-point fourth quarter lead against the awful Bears when they let Jay Cutler toss 3 touchdowns in a 7-minute span. A month later, on the shitty Edward Jones Dome turf, the other half of their inside linebacking royalty succumbed to a toe injury and underwent season-ending surgery. Harbaugh somehow kept them afloat for a while, and they won 7 of their first 11 games. But then things spiraled wildly out of control, starting with a Thanksgiving night embarrassment against the Seahawks in a game so demoralizing that York felt compelled to take to social media to apologize for the product put forth on the field. In the wake of that tweet, the Niners fell to the 1-11 Raiders the next week, dealing a near fatal blow to their playoff hopes, which were shortly thereafter officially extinguished with a Week 15 loss in Seattle. Following that loss, management informed Harbaugh that he would not be returning in 2015, and before the season was out, he accepted an offer to return to Ann Arbor and coach his alma mater. Upon the conclusion of a distraction-infested 8-8 season, York crafted a statement saying the two sides were mutually parting ways, which was a lie. York fired him. Harbaugh himself would eventually confirm that indeed he was told he wouldn't be the coach anymore, and that the 49er hierarchy had left him. And York issued that pink slip with no coherent plan in place to replace him, as he and Baalke royally bungled the coaching search. They were on the verge of hiring Broncos offensive coordinator Adam Gase, with an arrangement of him as head coach and star incumbent D coordinator Vic Fangio remaining in place, but that deal blew up at the last minute when management gave Gase an ultimatum that D-line coach and longtime York favorite Jim Tomsula had to be his defensive coordinator. It didn't work, so they just made Tomsula the head coach. Less than 2 months into his tenure, utter disaster struck the organization to kick off a period where key 49ers were dropping off the roster like flies. March 10th, 2015. Six-time All-Pro linebacker Patrick Willis announces his retirement from the NFL at age 30, citing chronic foot problems. On the very same day, they watched the best back in franchise history and one of the very best of all time depart when Frank Gore signed with the Colts in free agency. And for the cherry on top, savage run-blocking left guard Mike Iupati signed with the division rival Cardinals. While Willis's stunning retirement was a monumental blow from out of nowhere, the one silver lining was the presence of promising youngster Chris Borland, who was coming off a tremendous rookie season in which he led the league in tackles over the second half of the season despite missing the final 2 games. So at inside linebacker, they were all set to welcome back Bowman from his devastating knee injury and plug Borland into Willis's spot until 6 days later, when the 24-year-old Borland also shockingly said goodbye to football amid long-term concerns of the repetitive head trauma inherent to his position. Not a month later, they lost Crabtree when he ventured across the bay to Oakland. And in May, Justin Smith officially hung up the cleats after 14 grueling years in the trenches. How crucial was Smith to the Niners' excellence of yesteryear? Well, in 2012, the Niners played 19 regular and postseason games. In the first 13, San Francisco's D was absolutely smothering. Then he tore his triceps off the bone in Foxborough in Week 15. He somehow returned to play in the playoffs with a giant brace, but across their final 6 games with Smith either sidelined or playing with one arm, the defense totally and completely fell apart. Just a couple weeks later, their O-line took another hit when right tackle Anthony Davis announced that he too was walking away from football at age 25. And to cap the offseason from hell, Aldon Smith was arrested for the 5th time in his 4 years as a Niner when he was charged with DUI, hit and run, and vandalism in August 2015. As spectacular as his pass rushing potential was, that was the final straw, and he was released just hours later. Then it came time to play football, with a coaching staff that was in completely over their heads, and Kaepernick playing through ailments that would require not 1, not 2, but 3 surgeries. They lost 6 of their first 8 games before more drastic change struck. Vernon Davis, the only tight end in NFL history with multiple seasons scoring at least 13 touchdowns, had now gone 19 straight games without finding the end zone and was flipped to Denver the day after the Niners got steamrolled in St. Louis in Week 8. 2 days later, Tomsula officially announced he was benching Kaepernick. The keys to the offense were then handed to Blaine Gabbert, a nice guy who tries his hardest, but happens to be a remarkably incompetent NFL quarterback who no one should want in the same time zone as their team city unless it's as an opponent. Shockingly, he did not pull a rabbit out of the hat over the second half of the season, and down the stretch even led the team to a pitiful loss against Johnny honest-to-goodness Manziel. Just a couple years removed from annual contention, the team finished up a rotten 5-11 season and were among the dregs of the league, both offensively and defensively, going nowhere fast. York decided to take a half measure, firing Tomsula after his lone rancid season, but keeping Baalke in charge of the football operation. And with the current disastrous state of the franchise, their options for a new coach were limited. Baalke eventually settled on Chip Kelly, the deposed former Eagles coach. Kelly inherited a team with a quarterback situation in complete flux. Not only was Kaepernick recovering from operations to his shoulder, thumb, and knee, but he was very nearly traded to Denver, only to remain a Niner when he refused the pay cut the Broncos wanted him to take. With Cap unable to do much football work in the offseason, Kelly opened the 2016 season by again trotting Gabbert out as the Niners' starting quarterback, with the only reasonable explanation for his ongoing presence on an NFL 53-man roster being that he must know where all of the bodies are buried. A Week 1 win over NFL punching bag Jeff Fisher provided a false sense of competence before everything immediately came apart at the seams. They'd lose their next 4 games, a stretch in which Bowman suffered another awful injury, this time a ruptured Achilles that robbed the defense of their leader, and punctuated by a loss to the Drew Stanton-led Cardinals before Chip mercifully yanked Blaine Gabbert from the lineup and inserted Kaepernick. But spearheaded by the league's worst defense, the losses just wouldn't stop avalanching. That vaunted run D from the Harbaugh era, which didn't allow a single rushing TD for the first 14 games of his tenure, while in that time not allowing a single back to crack even 65 rushing yards on him, was now replaced by a softer than tissue paper unit that hemorrhaged yardage. Opposing backs feasted on the Bowman-less Niners as they became the only team to ever allow a 100-yard rusher in 7 straight games. With the NFL having also fully caught up to Kelly's unorthodox offensive principles, it was all part of a franchise record 13-game losing streak for the 49ers. Despite that, one of the very few players who did actually play relatively well was Kaepernick, literally an above-average passer in 2016. But throughout the season, he took a knee every week during the pregame national anthem to protest racial inequality and police brutality, and for that would become essentially blackballed by the league's owners. On January 1st, 2017, after ending their repulsive season with loss number 14, York fired his coach for the 3rd year in a row, this time finally sending Baalke packing alongside him. The San Francisco 49ers under coach Jim Harbaugh had developed a blue-collar identity that fought like hell week in and week out, did a whole lot of winning, and should have continued to do a whole lot of winning. However, they suffered through some excruciatingly tough breaks, lost some aging foundational pieces, and endured the departures of some extremely talented players much earlier than anyone could have foreseen for a variety of reasons. But more than anything else, management just couldn't resist trying to fix something that was the furthest thing from broken. Winning wasn't good enough. They just had to win their way and get the credit for it too. And because of that, they ruined everything and sent the organization rapidly spiraling back to rock bottom. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. I gotta say, producing and reliving a video on the collapse of a team I love with every fiber of my being was just bunches of fun. Anyway, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click to watch more of our stuff.